Most of Whitefield's preaching was open-air preaching. Can you tell us about that?
Reverend Whitefield was a pioneer of what was known as field preaching. He went to where the people were. He didn't feel that you had to come inside a church to hear the gospel. He would preach in fields, he would preach outside of coal mines. Wherever there were people that were hungry to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's where he went.
Were there some churches that wouldn't allow him to preach there?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, very few pulpits in New England were open to him. Many clergy, I believe, were simply jealous of him. He drew thousands, they didn't. He was a colonial celebrity, they were not. So there were actually very few pulpits that were open to Whitefield at the time.
It's been said that Whitefield could speak to 20,000 people at a time. What can you tell us about that?
Just south of here, Boston Common, it was said that Whitefield preached to 20,000 people. Ben Franklin, the inventor, was famous for his calculations. And so he once heard Whitefield preach in the open air in Philadelphia. And he did a grid pattern and went up and down the streets. And he went as far as he could and not hear Whitefield, and he took a step in. And he determined that 30,000 people could fit in that grid and hear Reverend Whitefield in the open air. On another occasion in Philadelphia, Whitefield was preaching along the Schuylkill River, and there was a farmer in his field a mile away, and he heard what he thought was the voice of God. And later that evening, he learned that Whitefield was preaching at the time when he was out in his field, a mile away down the river. So you can imagine how many people would have been between where Whitefield was and where this farmer was. We're in the basement of the Old South Church here in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and this is the resting spot of Reverend George Whitefield. The funeral was held here on October 2nd of 1770. People came from all the surrounding communities. The newspaper in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at the time reported that over 8,000 people were in attendance.
What was the impact of Whitefield's life?
His preaching had produced thousands of people who believed in Jesus Christ, and they had a tremendous impact, not only in their communities, but also in their churches. He also had an impact politically. The focus that he preached on personal responsibility and personal faith. The colonists were able to think in individual terms as well as corporate terms, and so their ability to come together and to determine what they wanted to do individually laid the foundation for the patriotic movement in the colonies.
Whitefield was one of the new lights because he believed and preached that we are saved because God changes man, and we have light inside of us because of God's work.